It's our distinct honor and pleasure to welcome now Representative Jason Smith. He represents Missouri's 8th District, but serves as the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee in the U.S. House of Representatives. Congressman Smith, thanks so much for joining us, sir.
It's great to be with you, sir.
Yeah, man, so I first got to tell you hello from our mutual friend, Congressman Michael Guest.
You know, Michael is one of the finest members that I serve with in Congress, and he's a huge fan of your show. So he's like, you need to be on the show. He's a good man, and if Michael Guest asks me to do something, you bet I'm there.
Man, we so much appreciate it. I know that you guys are busy now. You've been off this week, right?
You know, we've not been in session in Washington, which is it's nice, but unfortunately we got 11 inches of snow in Missouri, so it's been something. But I'm ready for winter to be over with.
I got you. So I know that your highest priority and something that you're directly responsible for is devising a House budget plan. You know that the president has called for one big, beautiful bill that would include extension of the Trump tax cuts, and then, of course, some spending cuts and addressing immigration and energy. Where do we stand?
That's a great question. For your listeners, if they're not like nearly as familiar with the Ways and Means Committee, which I'm chairman of, it's the committee that's oldest in Congress. It's been around since 1789. It's in charge of all of tax policy, all of trade policy, all of Social Security, Medicare, a lot of welfare programs. So it touches a lot of things. It touches every American's lives. And right now, we're working on one big, beautiful bill, as the president would say, that would address border policy, energy policy, spending cuts, but also tax cuts. What a lot of people aren't aware of is that if Congress does not act by the end of this year, we will see the largest tax increase in the history of America. On average, 207 million taxpayers will see their taxes increase 22 percentage points. That's a big impact, and so we need to make sure that doesn't happen. And then also we need to follow through with a lot of the other provisions that the president has campaigned on, like cutting no taxes on tips, taxes on overtime, tax relief for seniors, tax incentives for products produced in the United States. And so we're in the early stages of this process. The budget resolution, which starts the whole process, will be voted on the House floor on Tuesday when we return.
Okay. So we've explained this on the show numerous times, but help us understand this budget reconciliation process and the rules in the Senate, which, of course, require that, honestly, a needle seems like it has to be thread to make the math work. So the Senate parliamentarian approves legislation for passing with a simple majority. The Senate passed a bill last night. Looks like it was another vote-a-rama up until about 4 o'clock in the morning. Numerous amendments offered by the Democrats and Republican Rand Paul, who I believe voted against the measure. You guys are on different paths here.
You know, we definitely have to thread the needle. I was very unfortunate to see what the Senate did yesterday, even after the president this week said that he wants one big, beautiful bill that includes tax cuts, spending cuts, border and energy. Unfortunately, the proposal that they did yesterday was a much more simpler version, which was just border and energy. It didn't have any spending cuts. It didn't have tax relief. And these are huge priorities. What I'd like to remind my colleagues in the Senate is never before in the history of America has two different partisan reconciliation bills ever been signed into law in the same year. And that's what they're suggesting. That's what they're pushing for. It's one of the reasons why Donald Trump is like, let's do one, because there's only going to be one. And so for them to only push a bill that just dealt with border and energy and did not address the huge tax increase that every American's facing, I think is reckless. And that's why we're moving ahead with the one bill. And whenever we push this one bill and send it over to the Senate tomorrow, on Tuesday, they'll be able to make the changes that they want and send it back. But it's too important to play Russian roulette with people's taxes. And that's, in fact, what people are doing if they think that they can wait towards the end of the year. And it's not being smart. There's 26 million small business owners right now that are making decisions of how to invest or how to advise or how to hire within their business structures for tax year 26. And they need that certainty. They don't know if their tax rates are going to be 43.4% or 23.4%. Congress needs to act and give them that certainty.
That's absolutely 100% true. And something else, Congressman, something I personally had to deal with as a former business owner is the lack of clarity on estate taxes or capital gains if you're perhaps entertaining selling your business and monetizing your business. Huge difference that could make if these tax cuts expire.
Huge difference. One other provision that's expiring is there's a large exemption for the death tax. That gets slashed in half if Congress does not follow through by the end of this year on these expiring tax provisions. But you know what? There's a lot of tax provisions that actually 2/3 of the expiring tax provisions affect people who make less than $400,000 a year.
Yeah. That's
huge. You're talking about the child tax credit being slashed in half from $2,000 to $1,000. You're talking about the guaranteed deduction, which 91% of Americans use to file their taxes. That gets slashed in half, and every individual rate, whether you're wealthy or whether you're low income, will go up. This is the last thing that Americans need, is a 22% tax increase when they've already faced a 22% inflation tax over the last 4 years in the Biden economy.
I know you've also got some concerns of just rallying the Republican caucus. You don't have any margin for error, as you know, like lose one vote perhaps to pass this legislation. You got some members from the deep blue high tax states. Nicole Maliotakis is one that comes to mind from New York that really wants to see the SALT cap increase from the present level of $10,000. What do you think happens there?
You know, this is a delicate process, and we're going to have to thread a needle. And the reason why I say that is that whenever Elise Stefanik is confirmed to be the UN ambassador, the majority will be 217 to 215. 217 to 215. So you can't even lose one person at that point. And so that means we have to stay unified. We have to work together. This is the smallest majority that any party has had in the history of the country. And the majority in the Senate is actually larger than the majority in the House, which is very, very rare. And so that means everyone's going to have to give and take. The SALT issue is definitely a major issue to a lot of my colleagues in New York, California, New Jersey. The $10,000 cap that was put in 2017, it's not going to be able to suffice. I don't know what that number is, but it's going to be a balancing act. There's people in our conference that doesn't want a SALT deduction at all, and there's others that want a $100,000 SALT deduction. Well, it's not going to be either one of those, but it's going to be somewhere in the middle. It's the same way with the IRA credit, for example. There's some that completely want to repeal every IRA credit, and there's others that want to use a scalpel. And so we have to use a balancing act to get everyone on the page. I cannot lose one person, and we're not. Failure is not an option, though. I am not going to be the Ways and Means chairman and allow the largest tax increase in the history of America on Republicans' watch. When Donald Trump's in the White House and the House and Senate is controlled by Republicans, it cannot happen, and it won't happen.
Amen. That's awesome. What about just you guys getting together with the Senate? Do you see this thing going to conference and you trying to just hammer out the differences? Because as you pointed out, the Senate didn't even address tax reform, and I share your concerns that we're not going to get anything and run out of time.
The first budget resolution that goes will have tax policy in it, and so the Senate will make their changes to the bill that we pass out of the House this coming week, and we'll be able to then start the process for the true legislation, but they'll come around. Right now, the Senate's being the Senate, and this is how they act. But they're the higher chamber, as some people refer, and they definitely believe they're the high chamber.
Representative Jason Smith from the great state of Missouri, chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, has been our guest on Middays. Thank you so much, Congressman Smith, for joining us today. Thank you for speaking to the people of Mississippi.
It's great to be with you, and thanks for being the voice for the people of Mississippi.